from the WKYT studios in Lexington, this is Kentucky Newsmakers with Bill Bryant.
Good morning from WKYT News. Hope you're having a nice weekend. In just a few minutes, a look inside the numbers of the new Bluegrass poll on the governor's race and issues facing Kentucky. But first, our guest on Kentucky Newsmakers is the governor of the Commonwealth, Steve Beshear. In just a few weeks, Governor Beshear will wrap up 8 years in office and move on to his next horizon. He's led the state during a time of change and challenges. The economy tanked early in his administration nationally, and the governor's gotten high marks from people of all political stripes for managing through those tough days. He's also faced several natural disasters, from tornadoes to ice storms to crippling snowfalls. Beshear made a controversial decision to expand Medicaid, as some continue to worry about the costs of that. We'll get an update from him on that. And when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled same-sex marriage is the law of the land, Governor Beshear ordered county clerks to comply, which, as you know, has led to legal wrangling and lots of attention around the country. Governor Beshear joining us for a wide-ranging interview this morning on Kentucky Newsmakers. And it's good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Good to see you.
Well, when you think about being there just a few more weeks left in office, how does that hit you? Nostalgia, relief? Do you wish you could stay on?
Well, you know, it's been a challenging 8 years, but it's been an exciting 8 years too, Bill. As you mentioned in your introduction, it was about 2 weeks after I walked into office at the end of 2007 when this historic recession, the worst recession of our lifetimes, hit us full in the face, and we really had to struggle through that. And families, you know, in Kentucky struggled through it just like we did. But we've come out on the other side of that, and we've come out because of, I think, some good strategic decision-making coming through that recession, where we're better off than almost any other state in the country right now. You know, we were, from an economic standpoint, chosen last year as the #1 state in the whole country when it comes to large-scale economic development and job creation. You know, our unemployment rate has dropped down to the national average. It was up close to 11%. It's now down to about 5%. Exports, we've set records the last 4 years in a row. It's just going great guns. The CEOs who said to me in 2008 and 9, Governor, I know that your people need jobs, but we don't have any. They're now saying to me, Governor, we got 50 jobs, we got 75 jobs. We can't find enough people to fill them, and that's a great problem to have. You look at what we've done in education, and we've sort of become the model in the nation in many ways in education. We've taken our college and career readiness rate from 34% in 2010 all the way up to 62% in 2014. We've raised our dropout age with the First Lady's help from 16 to 18. We've got things going in education, and then to be the model in the nation for providing health care to every single Kentuckian. You know, for the first time in history, every single Kentuckian has access to affordable health care. And a generation from now, I think that's going to be such a tremendous benefit to all of us.
When you look back to those dark days of 2008, 2009, and the reports kept coming in, and they kept being discouraging, and you somehow managed to keep a steady hand. Were there times when you thought this is really going south on Kentucky?
Well, you know, I sort of looked at it. I'm old enough to have read history, at least, about FDR and what he did during the Great Recession. Now, I don't pretend to compare myself to that great man, but the attitude that he took, you know, he kept positive. He kept telling people it's going to be okay and we're going to get through this. And I sort of adopted that kind of approach. I said, you know, there's no reason to be pessimistic here. We're all pessimistic right now because the economy is so bad. But we've got to keep people's hopes up. We've got to keep people looking to the future. And if they believe things are going to get better, they will get better. And so we just kept out there, kept pushing, kept smiling, and kept working hard to push our way through this. And we also, Bill, during that time, we had to cut our budget, you know, 15 times, about $1.6 billion. But we were smart in how we did it. Most other states just cut across the board. They cut K through 12. They cut economic development and public safety along with everything else. We didn't. You know, it made it harder because when you pick some things to preserve, you got to cut everything else a lot more. But in the long run, by preserving K through 12 funding and public safety and concentrating on job creation, we were able to keep that foundation together that a lot of states didn't. And so when the economy started to improve and we came out on the other side, we had that foundation to launch off of.
And now a surplus for this year, and that is going to amount to how much?
Well, we had a surplus of $164 million when we wrapped up the last fiscal year, and after paying all our bills, we put $82 million into the rainy day fund. And also the consensus forecasting group, which is the group that projects for the next budget period, is projecting about 2.7, 2.8% growth. I honestly think it's going to be higher than that, but, you know, they're conservative, and I don't blame them. But, you know, just this last month, I think our revenues grew 7.6%. So, you know, we're really on the upside. We got good things going.
Well, then the governor of Florida came up here and said he was going to take some Kentucky jobs south, and said that the policies there are more business friendly, and you had some things that you said back to him.
Well, I mean, you know, Governor Scott, it was a political stunt that he's on the Republican Governor Association Executive Committee, so he's picked out 4 or 5 states that have Democratic governors and comes in and tries to make a case that, you know, you don't have right to work and you don't have a lot of these things, and so you're much worse off. You know, Florida didn't win the #1 state in the country last year for economic development. Kentucky did. It's true that some of their taxes are less. And we all like to go down there and vacation, don't get me wrong, but go down there and buy something and then pay that property tax and pay that sales tax when you buy stuff. You'll come home pretty fast.
The same-sex marriage controversy has left Kentucky in the national spotlight, with Rowan County Clerk Kim Davis refusing to issue licenses and even going to jail for it. She has sued you over saying that your letter was a takeover of local offices. Did you consider any other approach when you simply told clerks to comply with a federal ruling?
Bill, first of all, you know, I took that case to the Supreme Court because I felt like that Kentuckians needed and the nation needed a final ruling by the highest court in the land about what the law was going to be. And I said at the time, whatever they rule, that's what we'll do. They ruled, and they held same-sex marriage valid and that it had to be allowed in all the states. And at that point, I wrote the county clerks. You know, I don't have control over them, but I did write them and say, look, the Supreme Court's ruled. It's legal in Kentucky, and so you should be issuing licenses to everybody who comes in and qualifies, same-sex or opposite-sex couples. And I'm proud to say that immediately 117 of our 120 county clerks stepped up, many of whom don't agree with the decision, but they knew it was their job. You know, when they ran for office and they raised their hand and took that oath to uphold the Constitution and laws of the country and the state, they gave up a little bit of their personal right to act in their official capacity. You know, they're supposed to carry out the laws of the land, whatever they are. And so, you know, I advised the clerk in Rowan County, the clerk in Casey County, look, in my mind, you've got 2 choices. You know, you either obey the law as you swore you would do, or if your conscience tells you you just can't do it, then the honorable thing to do is resign. I think there's a few clerks around the country that were faced with this situation and just felt they couldn't follow the law, and so they resigned. But, you know, you have what you have, and we're going through that process right now. But the law is pretty clear.
Did you consider, as some wanted, taking some executive action or calling the state legislature in, which you pretty early on said you were not going to do, to either take the county clerk's names off of those forms or to transfer those duties to Frankfort?
Well, first of all, calling a special session of the General Assembly when you've got 117 out of 120 clerks doing their jobs, to me was a real overreaction. I mean, I was going to cost the state and the taxpayers $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 of their tax money when I thought it was unnecessary. You know, the thing was, let's just step up. You're being paid with tax money, so let's follow the law. I don't have the authority by executive action to change a statute. You know, the statute that the legislature passed says county clerks will issue marriage licenses. And so, and the form is sort of set out right in the statute. I sometimes wish I had the executive authority to change statutes, and we probably wouldn't need the legislature. We could just let them stay home, but I don't think they would like that either.
Are you concerned at all? Of course, you'll be out of office by then, but are you concerned that this may get bogged down in the regular session that's coming up in January as an issue that might keep lawmakers from being able to focus on the budget and some other legislation coming up?
I think they will, if they're going to make a change, I think they'll fashion something and change the way they're issued. They may make it electronic. What you've got to understand is that there's going to be some person somewhere that's going to either push a button or do something, and that person has a conscience too. So, when you start exempting public officials from doing their job, there's really nowhere you can stop. Think, for instance, if a clerk out there tomorrow decides, my religion tells me that divorce is a sin, and there are some religions that feel that way, and so they decide, I'm not going to issue marriage licenses to anybody who's been divorced. There's no stopping it when you start making exemptions like that. So I think they'll come up with a solution, and we'll move forward.
It appears the state school board has hired a Common Core advocate for education commissioner. Do you think that could potentially create some friction with the legislature when that person comes to town? Interestingly, just as the administration is changing in the governor's mansion.
I've met Dr. Pruitt, and I was impressed. He's young, and he's energetic, and I think will continue the great work that Dr. Holliday has done. I couldn't have had a better partner for the last 8 years than Terry Holliday, and together, we've made some real differences in terms of education in Kentucky. The Common Core standards, they've been made into a big bugaboo by some of the critics of it. All they are standards put together by governors of 45 states and educators in 45 states. The President of the United States had nothing to do with it. We all put them together because we all agreed, Republicans and Democrats alike, that we ought to have a common set of standards saying, by the 3rd grade, kids ought to know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the 7th grade, they ought to know this. By the time they graduate, they ought to know that. It doesn't set curriculum. It allows local districts to do whatever they want to. It just gives us kind of a roadmap of what a child should know along the way, so that we measure against that. Do they know that by that age? And it's doing well in Kentucky, and we were fortunate. Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, the entire business community, got in behind the Common Core standards because they knew that we needed to do this for a more productive workforce. All of the teachers in this state, we went to them, we sat down, we worked through this with them. They're all on board. So it's working in Kentucky. You got some other states that are turning it into a political issue, but Kentucky's not.
Governor Steve Beshear is our guest on Kentucky Newsmakers. We're back in a moment. We'll ask him about a few more issues and the campaign ahead and what he's going to do when he leaves office in just a moment. Welcome back to WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. Governor Steve Beshear, our guest today, his final weeks in office after 8 years of leading the Commonwealth. Governor, you expanded Medicaid, and Kentucky's rate of uninsured, as you said, fell faster than any other state. But there are continuing concerns about what happens after 2017 when Kentucky has to pick up a portion of the cost of that expansion. You have said that you got good advice, that you believe that it will work out. Do you hold to that at this point?
Certainly, Bill. And what I like to say is that there are people that don't like the Affordable Care Act for one reason or another, whether it's the president's name attached to it or whatever it is, they don't like it. And that's okay. But everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but nobody's entitled to their own facts. And you keep getting these critics saying, oh, we can't afford this. Well, all the facts out there right now say we can. And I went and got those facts. I got PricewaterhouseCoopers to come in and do a study before I made the decision to expand. Then after the first year of expansion, I got Deloitte to come in and do a study. And both of them concluded that, Governor, we'd be crazy if we don't do this, because not only can we afford it, but you're creating jobs. We created 12,000 new jobs the first year of this in the medical field. Over the course of 8 years, they say we're going to create about 40,000 new jobs, and the revenues that are going to come in from all of that activity are going to more than offset the match that we've got to pay. And here's the key, Bill. At any point, we need to check this every year. And I would encourage the next governor, check it every year. Go in and look at what the facts are.
And what if there comes to be an issue?
If there's an issue, you can pull back. We're not required to do this forever. We can stop it anytime we want to. And if you come up with a situation where it's going to bankrupt the state, I mean, that's never going to happen. But let's say you see these facts. You say, okay, we got to pull back. So why in the world would you pull back health care from about 500,000 Kentuckians who have it for the first time in their lives when the facts are all telling you it's okay right now, you can afford it? Down the road, if something comes up, you can always change. But for God's sakes, I mean, as long as we can afford this, think of what this is going to do for Kentuckians. Think of when you have a healthier workforce, it's going to be a more productive workforce. And the CEOs of companies that are looking at Kentucky all know that. And if we make that workforce healthier, it'll be more productive. And these companies are going to be falling all over themselves to get to Kentucky.
Is the Medicaid expansion more important to you if you had to have one or the other, or the keeping the local exchange that we did, the Connect exchange, which the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor last week compared it to a Travelocity site for insurance as far as being a website. Do you think that that component could be merged over to the federal exchange?
Well, number one, the law says you have to be in an exchange. So you can either be in a federal exchange, a cookie cutter kind of approach on the federal level, or your own exchange. When we first made that decision, every stakeholder in this state, you got the Chamber of Commerce, the Hospital Association, the Doctors Association, all of them said, Governor, let's do our own exchange because we can fashion one better than the federal government. So we did, and we did fashion one better. I mean, it's the model for the nation. If we change, it's going to cost us, number one, about $27 million over a 9-month period to change all the technology and all of that. And number two, right now on our exchange, the assessment on policies is 1%. If you go to the federal exchange, it's 3.5%. Why would we want to do that and cost our people more money? Then the expansion of Medicaid, that has brought in so many more people, working people, that need health care coverage, and now that they have it, they're going to do better at work. They're going to move up the economic level. And once they do, they're going to come out of the Medicaid program. They're going to be buying those policies on the exchange. You know, this is going to feed on itself. It is going to make a better tomorrow for every single Kentuckian.
You have been under some criticism, Governor, for the makeup of university boards. In Louisville, there are no African Americans on the board. On several of the boards, there are apparently not enough Republicans to satisfy the state law. How did it get to that?
Well, you've got, I can't even tell you how many boards you have, a lot. And you've got all these laws on the books about you got to have so many Democrats and Republicans percentage-wise, and minorities, and people from different areas of the state. And so what you do is you do your best as you move along, and these appointments are staggered on a board. You don't get to make them all at one time. So, you know, it's a moving target all the time. So what we do is do our best to look at where we are at any particular time and what you need, but you're never going to have it perfect because people are constantly rotating off and other people are rotating on. Now, right now at U of L, I think there are 17 governor appointments, and we have one minority who happens to be a Cuban American. If you look at the percentage, I think minorities in the state are maybe 11–12%, so you probably ought to have two. And I agree with that. And so the next appointments that come up, if I get a chance to do it, I'll make sure to do that, or the next governor can.
The race to replace you is underway. What do you have to say about that election at this point? Are you going to be aggressive in the last few weeks before the election?
I've been very aggressive and will continue to be very aggressive, Bill, for Jack Conway. And it's a simple answer. I've worked hard for 8 years to get this state to where it is today, and we've talked about a lot of where we are in education and health care and economic development. We've got this state on the move. I know that Jack Conway will take that foundation and build on it. He may change things. I mean, he's going to have his own ideas, and that's good. Every governor should. But at least he's going to build on what we've done. I mean, Matt Bevin, at least so far, he's come out, he wants to wipe out the health care program totally because he just doesn't like it and doesn't like Obama, and so we're going to wipe that out. We're going to do away with early childhood education and development because it's somehow indoctrinating our children somehow. He doesn't like the tax incentive programs that we've used to create thousands of jobs in Kentucky. I mean, he's going to try to tear everything up that we've done in 8 years, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that he doesn't get the opportunity to do that.
You just had a 71st birthday, right?
Oh, I wish you hadn't said that.
What are you going to do when you leave office in early December?
Well, I'm a very young 71, Bill. You know, Jane and I are going to spend some more time. She's been awfully busy for 8 years, too, and what a record that she has put together with so many things in education and health care, breast cancer awareness, raised $1 million endowment to keep the mansion in shape for the next 100 years. I mean, the list goes on and on. But we're going to take a little time. I'm going to stay busy. I'll be doing something. She says I need to come to the farm to help her muck out the stalls, you know, but I told her I've been mucking the stalls out in Frankfurt for 8 years. So maybe I want to do something else. We'll see.
A little change of venue, though.
That's right.
All right. I want to thank you for the access that you've given us during your term as governor. We appreciate it very much that you've come by regularly and updated folks, and we appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And we want to hope you'll stay with us on WKYT's Kentucky Newsmakers. We'll look at the bluegrass poll and that race to replace Governor Steve Beshear in just a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. The Bluegrass poll was released this week showing Democrat Jack Conway leading Republican Matt Bevin by 5 points as we hit October. The poll conducted for WKYT, the Lexington Herald Leader, and our partners in Louisville shows if the election were held now, Jack Conway would get 42% of the vote, Matt Bevin would get 37% of the vote, and independent Drew Curtis's share would be 7%. Herald Leader political writer Sam Youngman is here to look over the numbers with us. What does this say as we head into the final weeks of the campaign, Sam?
Well, it's pretty remarkable. You know, we polled this race in July, and there's been virtually no change since then, despite Fancy Farm, despite our first debate, which the Bluegrass poll partner sponsored. So what I'm seeing is Kentucky voters still aren't engaged, and you know what? They might not get engaged. What you see here is a huge undecided margin, about 15%, which, based on what we saw last November, I sort of expect to break Bevin's way. But right now, I think if you're Jack Conway, considering the summer you just went through, you're looking at these numbers and you've got to be pretty happy.
There are some others who may have some impact on the race. We looked at Governor Beshear's approval rating, and we'll put that up and look at it. And considering that he is in the last weeks of an 8-year term, some might say it is a remarkable reading.
Yeah, no, I think President Obama would ask Governor Beshear, what's your secret? I mean, here he is in his 8th year, and half of voters still approve of the job he's doing. And if you drill down, you look and you see only about 1/3 of voters disapprove. So that's a plus 18 positive rating. You know, I think that's got to provide some solace to Jack Conway as he's running against what, you know, we've always assumed to be tremendous headwinds, given the president's unpopularity here. So it's sort of I think the political environment's more of a mixed bag than maybe we've assumed all along.
And we'll look at the president's approval, and we'll show what you're talking about in terms of the potential drag that his lack of popularity could have on the Democratic ticket.
Well, there's a reason every ad you see coming out of a Republican campaign features the name Barack Obama, and these numbers are that reason. Now, they really haven't changed that much over the last couple of years. He's always hovered around this 31% here in Kentucky, you know, and I think that's why you're seeing Matt Bevin, you're seeing Whitney Westerfield, you're seeing just about every Republican candidate running these, you know, my opponent is Obama ads.
Same-sex marriage has been a major issue in Kentucky since the U.S. Supreme Court ruling legalizing it nationwide. And Rowan County Clerk Kim Davis, who has refused to issue marriage licenses since that ruling, also was tested in this poll to see where people stand on that. And the results are this, that the majority, by a slight number there, say that she should be required to issue the marriage licenses.
Yeah, you know, this is really a remarkable number to me. And again, I think maybe we made some assumptions over the summer that these polls somewhat refute. You know, Kentucky has a notorious socially conservative streak, but I think it sort of stops at the water's edge when it comes to a public official. You know, these polls, I think Matt Bevin would have guessed when he showed up in Grayson outside the jail that these numbers would look decidedly different. Now, they're not what we're seeing nationally. The Washington Post polled this and showed 63% should say that Kim Davis should issue licenses. But still, more than half of Kentucky voters saying she should issue licenses. Well, I'll be honest, it was a surprise to me. Those
polled also seem to want Bevin to release his income tax returns. We asked that question in a way that got a response as to whether it should happen before or after the election. And here it is. Should Matt Bevin release his tax records before or after the election? And more than 2/3 say before they go to the polls.
You know, Jack Conway's campaign has really tried to push the case that Matt Bevin can't be trusted, and they've used this as a way of doing that, noting that Bevin has just refused to release his tax returns. He's told reporters, well, I'll do it after I get elected. Apparently, Kentucky voters don't like that. You know, there's a bipartisan tradition here in Kentucky of gubernatorial candidates releasing their tax returns. Now, they're not required to. Bevin's right about that. But it does seem like Kentucky voters definitely side on the side of transparency.
Republican Governors Association pulling its ads for now from the Bevin campaign. Is that based on what they're seeing in numbers, or is it because he has not invested a lot in his own ads?
I think you could call this tough love. This is the RGA trying to make Matt Bevin get serious about his campaign. You know, until this week, he'd only run one ad at a cost of about $150,000. The RGA, on the other hand, has spent about $3 million defending Bevin over the summer. You know, these Washington groups, they will spend money and they will spend heavily to elect a candidate, but only if they feel like the candidate is doing something to help him or herself. And I think in this instance, they're trying to prod Bevin to get more serious.
James Comer quickly jumping in that congressional race out in the 1st District where Ed Whitfield announced he's retiring. Just a few seconds left. Your reaction to that?
You know, I think he's got to be the early favorite. I mean, if you look at how well he did there, you remember primary night, seeing this shocking comeback he made in the western part of the state, that's home to him. I think early on he's got to be the favorite, but I also expect it to be a cattle call.
Sam Youngman, thank you. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
We want to thank you for joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers on WKYT, and we hope you make it a good week ahead.